Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 126, The Divining Rod by Charles Latimer. Relatively short, 56-page work, but it is in-depth and it does contain a lot of secondary sources, so it comes highly recommended if you're interested in sort of water witching, the age-old practice of dowsing in general, not just for water but for minerals, and in the modern age for medical purposes. Actually, I'll explain a little bit about that. As always, a link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon, cheaper than the only other competing edition of the same, as usual. Second link to my blog spot, and a third to my WordPress. Both of these have the same content where you can search through for various titles. As of yet, I don't have the categories sort of on the WordPress blog. I'm still working on that, but on Blogger you can get them. For those of you that don't want to use a Google service, because I know some people don't, as much as you, any more than you have to, WordPress does work. Now this specific work is written by someone who claims, yeah, indeed, he has dowsed for minerals and water successfully over time. It speaks about the basic process of the same, the construction of and composition of dowsing rods, what can be dowsed for, and a little bit of the backstory dating back centuries before from France up through then modern times. Of course, we're talking about the middle of the 1800s. And it is true that these railroad companies and other firms during that period of time, we're talking about the 1870s, the industrial boom then, they did hire people who claimed to be able to dowse. Farmers did as well to find wells. In some cases, you're talking about nothing more than the fact that aquifers happened to dot the landscape anyway, and so anywhere where there was water on the surface, there was likely to be water below as well. So some of it is pseudoscientific, and of course, in the modern age, oftentimes, I've seen this before, I've actually met people who do this. They'll take the little dowsing rods. Usually they use two separate sort of sticks of copper. It doesn't have to be copper, but that seems to be preferred. And they sort of have a little bend in them. And you hold them, and you're supposed to hold them sort of like this. And then slowly move around. And if you do it right, supposedly at some point they will cross because they're detecting an energetic field of some sort or another. And you sort of position them there. And the idea is that these vortices of energy can cause medical problems of a mental or physical sort, and you can sort of close off the energy vortice and cure disease or prevent it from happening. That, however, is not spoken of in literature until fairly recently. In the ancient times, it was not two separate prongs that you were using. It was one piece Y or V shaped. Number one. Number two, it was used to find especially iron, but also any other minerals deposited in the ground, as well as water. And again, these things happen to be prevalent enough within the crust of the earth, so that basically anywhere you're looking, you're going to find, if you dig deep enough, some source of water, unless you happen to be in the middle of the Sahara or something. You will find minerals scattered around the world quite plentifully. And so dowsing, some of it was guesswork, some of it is as yet not fully explained. I've seen people pretend that they could dowse for energy fields. That's, again, it's not spoken of in these older works. That's a New Age approach. That's a post-Victorian sort of facet, in fact, a post-atomic facet of the use thereof. But it's an interesting work, especially for the sort of folklore and the history of dowsing, as well as some of the claims that are made. Anecdotal reports of people that actually did find things of value using that basic process. So maybe not read too much into it on a literal level, but it's still an interesting piece of history and folklore regardless. Again, link in the description to my edition on Amazon. Second and third link to my two literary blogs, where you can find all of my works then available. If you're interested in the folklore or the pseudoscience, there's plenty for you on both of them. That's about all. Peace out.